Hello and welcome. I'm Charles Aite. To our first story, the Bank of Ghana has indicated the cedi is to start stabilizing against the dollar in the next 2 weeks. This will be as a result of the series of measures outlined by the central bank aimed at the local currency's depreciation and checking the continuous hike in inflation rate. Philip Abredu-Otu is head of research at the Bank of Ghana, and he's been speaking to Joy Business on this and other policy measures announced by the central bank.
If you looked at the governor's statement, what the governor did or what the Monetary Policy Committee did was to deploy an interest rate tool and complement that interest rate tool with a macroprudential measures to try to address the challenges that we have. So if I should put it in a different way, we use both price and quantity tools to address the problem. So we raised the policy rate by 250 basis points. We expect that to trickle down to the markets almost immediately because that is the rate at which we are going to lend to the banks when the banks come to the central bank for accommodation. And what we did as far as the macroprudential measures were concerned was to first move the cash reserve ratio from 8% to 12%. You may recall that following the pandemic, there were banks that did apply to the Bank of Ghana for some relief measures to pay dividends to their shareholders. Now, for those banks that applied for these relief measures, we relaxed the cash reserve ratio to 10% for them. So within the industry, some were maintaining a cash reserve ratio of 8, whilst others were maintaining a cash reserve ratio of 10%. Whichever way you look at it, we've moved it from 8 to 12 in some instances and from 10 to 12 in some instances.
Mr. Abredu-Otu, sorry to come in here, and I want to get some understanding. It appears that yesterday you deployed two, and I'm breaking it down maybe to the layman's term, you use two sets of toolkits in trying to control the development on the market. Yeah. One was the policy rate, and then the other was the other banking measures, or is it the macro measures that you're using?
Yeah, they call them the macroprudential measures.
Now, help me out. Yeah. Why these two sets of modules? Because we're expecting that being the interest rate being that high, yeah, that should be enough to get the results that the Bank of Ghana or the Monetary Policy Committee was looking at.
Well, it depends on the transmission. You know, the interest rates has an immediate impact on the commercial banks, and then the general public then interfaces with the commercial banks through the demand for loans, and that also gets transmitted to the rest of the economy. The issue is that between the two policy tools, the speed of act on the economy is a little bit different if you look at it too. The macroprudential measures effective April 1. Sorry, there was a time lag that was given for these things to begin to take effect. So they begin taking effect April 1. But George, let me also add that I think the picture is being created as though these are new policy measures that are being brought on board. But this was the situation that existed prior to the pre-pandemic. Yeah. And what we did was to relax these regulatory reliefs to give liquidity to the banks to enable them to provide relief to the rest of the economy. What we are doing at this MPC round is to just claw them back. We are clawing them back because there are liquidity concerns, and these liquidity concerns are acting through the economy and creating all these imbalances. So we are clawing them back and putting them back where they were pre-pandemic. The only new thing that we've done is to raise the cash reserve ratio to 12%. And that is the only new thing that has been done.
You talked about liquidity concern, and since you're engaging somebody who plays with data and all the rest, has the committee and the Bank of Ghana being able to establish that there's so much liquidity out there coming on the back of COVID, where we thought that there wasn't much in the system. Just within this period, have we seen liquidity being so loose or so much, if you can use that expression, that you believe that these actions should be taken now?
Well, George, if you look at the commercial banks' excess reserves holdings, which we don't normally talk about, they are awash with a lot of liquidity. And when this liquidity sets down, they try to find work to do. They could do all sorts of things in the economy. They could chase effects on the markets because that is a spending power. And you know, these liquidity have come about because of the way things work and the way the transmission works. We at the height of the pandemic, you recall that the central bank provided an asset purchase program of 10 billion. And then we also saw the rapid credit facility of almost $1 billion. These are huge splurge of liquidity into the economy, and they work slowly in the economy. So they've moved through the economy, and they are sitting on the commercial banks' reserves here at the central bank. And so from the commercial bank's point of view, there is excess liquidity in the economy.
And you believe that these actions can control or tame that?
Well, they will. They will, especially the macroprudential ones, clawing them back. Although it's a reversion back to where we were pre-pandemic, the action in itself is taking something back from the banks. The additional 2% will claw back something from the bank. The lowering of the cash buffers on the capital adequacy ratio. Remember, we lowered it from 3%. There's a capital conservation buffer that the banks are supposed to keep on their capital adequacy ratio, and we had 3% buffer. That 3% buffer is designed to help the banks withstand shocks. We lowered that to 1.5%. Invariably, we gave them back 1.5% of that amount. Okay, now we are taking that one back. It's a drain on liquidity on the banks.
Have you done the extrapolations to establish the possible timelines with respect to these two modules that you have deployed? All other things being equal, we are first talking about immediate and all the rest. What are the timelines, the range that you're looking at that these policy measures would impact the market and the necessary correction would take place?
Well, George, as you speak, the increase in the policy rate is immediate. So immediately we announce policy changes, and the banks come to the central bank the following day, it takes effect. So the increase in the policy rate from
14.5%
to 17.5% is immediate. Today, when they come to that window to borrow, it's immediate.
Okay.
I think the question is how fast the commercial banks will then pass on this to the rest of the economy also remains another topic for discussion. But it's immediate. And again, the macroprudential measures, we give a time lag of maybe 2 weeks, April 1 to begin. And when that starts, that is also immediate.
I asked this question in the sense that you were targeting two main things, apart from the liquidity issue. One was the taming the city's depreciation and inflation. And that was why I was asking that, for instance, where should we start seeing the signs that it is getting to the market? At least first, we'll see the city more slowing the rate of depreciation a little bit, and then stability, and then inflation. We will see that the month-on-month numbers will be correcting and all the rest. I mean, from all the data and the extrapolation that you've done, how or when should we see these measures hitting these two main things that you are trying to deal with?
The exchange rate could be immediate and in the very short near to short term. For inflation, I think...
That is 1 month, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Some have said that immediately a week or 2 weeks, that should hit the market. Is that something that the Bank of Ghana shares in terms of these timelines when it comes to the exchange rate?
Well, we do.
And so what time are you looking at?
Probably from 2 weeks downwards, we should begin to see the markets reacting to the policy change. Sentiments will begin to change. The speculative elements will begin to die down. Already, if you heard the governor was saying that the exchange rate is in an overshoot. And anything that shoots up comes down.
Help me out with some education. That was a very interesting analysis that the governor sought to give, that we've seen the West, so don't expect any significant depreciation again. Interesting, some would say.
Well, because the exchange rate, like we always say, moves along with the fundamentals. And there's always a long-run trend for the exchange rate, okay, that are consistent with the fundamentals. Now, if you see the exchange rate moving way above where we think it should be, consistent with the fundamentals, it tells you there's a problem of an overshoot. That overshoot could be some speculative elements moving it above where it's supposed to be. Of course, there is stress in current macroeconomic conditions, and that stress affects confidence. The confidence then begins to impact on speculative activities, and that could overshoot the exchange rate. All over in the world, when exchange rates overshoot, they come down. So you heard the governor. The governor was confident that probably the worst is over.
And speculators were being warned that, listen, be careful, your days are over.
Yeah.
And that is what we should be expecting.
Yeah.
Let's look at the bit about inflation as well.
Yeah.
I mean, what lag time are you looking at maybe to look at how that could also impact the market based on the policy rate and even the macro-prudential measures, which some have said that is quite tough and hard?
No, so if you look at the inflation and you look at the analysis that were done during the meeting and which staff presented, the indication was that if no action is taken regarding the current inflation profile, we could see inflation move up till and then remain quite elevated all the way through to the end of 2022, and then probably into the first and second quarters of 2023. That is the baseline case scenario. If no.
And that was George Rafi interaction with the head of research at the Bank of Ghana. Quite detailed explanation there regarding reasons behind the measures put in place to arrest the city's depreciation.